All right, good morning. We left off yesterday with primary succession, which is just showing you one way in which an ecosystem can start from the very beginning, which means just on bare rock with no soil. And one thing on your notes I noticed that I need you to correct is beside number 1 where it says just primary, you probably should write out primary succession so you know what that primary has to do with. If you notice on the notes that you just glued in today, the next thing we're going to talk about with ecosystems is secondary succession. And so this is another change that happens to ecosystems, but this is to an ecosystem that already existed. So something happened, and it could be a forest fire, it could be tornado destruction, hurricane destruction, something where there is still soil. So if you look in number 4 on the diagram, it is showing you an area where there is still soil. And so it's kind of skipping the first couple phases of the primary succession because we don't have to have weathering occur on that rock in order to break it down a little bit for mosses and things to grow. So we had an ecosystem, we had a big forest fire or some natural disaster occur, but the soil is still left behind. Because of that, secondary succession takes much less time to occur. An ecosystem can build up pretty fast compared to primary because there is already soil for those small grasses and bushes to start growing, and then trees, and we have many animals moving into the area rather quickly. I would like you to go ahead and draw some of the things that you see in the diagram. Notice that I don't have as many spaces on the diagram on your paper, but if you read the titles below or the descriptions below each box, it'll show you what you should be drawing there. All right, so now we're going to talk more about the biotic factors that can change in an ecosystem. And one of those things is population size. So how many species are in a population within a community? And several things can impact the population size. That can be births and deaths. If there are more of that species being born than dying, which is the first line, so this is a greater than symbol right here. But if there's more animals in that population being born than dying, then you have an increase in population, and vice versa with that in letter B. Another thing that can affect the population size of a species is two words that sound alike but mean two different things. You really have to look at their spelling. Immigration with an I means to move into, or to move into the area, and immigration with an E means to leave, or I sometimes think exit. So immigration with an E, exit with an E. So if you have more animals in that species moving into a community than the ones leaving, you have an increase in population. But if you have more immigration going on with an E where they're exiting versus coming into, then you are going to have a decrease in the population of a certain species. And the third thing that can affect population changes within an ecosystem is reaching carrying capacity. All right, so one thing with carrying capacity that you need to know is that means how many organisms an ecosystem can provide for. How much water, how much shelter, and how much food does the ecosystem provide for a certain population. And once it maxes out, that means that it cannot provide what is necessary for life for a certain population. And so that population is either going to end up dying off because they don't have the resources they need in order to survive, or they're going to have to immigrate with an E, which means exit the community that they live in, so that they can be supported by another ecosystem. Now, I can't click on it. Actually, you probably just saw it click up on the screen, but this is a link. So if you go to the presentation on Blackboard, it will link you to a great tutorial on population ecology, which is just the study of how populations change in an ecosystem. So pretty much everything that we just talked about. And it will run through a specific example using bunnies, and it will really explain well what carrying capacity is if you still don't understand and need some further help on that. All right, so next we have adaptation. So we're still talking about how living organisms in an ecosystem can change. And this is talking about, again, a species. So over time, if a species is going to survive and really thrive and be able to live in a certain ecosystem, then it might have to make some adaptations as things around it are changing over time as well. And so, the theory of natural selection states that basically the strongest will survive, or the most adapted will survive. And so adaptation is one of those things that helps an organism better be suited for the environment in which it lives in, so it can survive. Now, this is where people get confused, because adaptation is very similar to another word, which is acclimation. And acclimation just is a very short-term change that happens, and it's not really a big effect. An example of acclimation is when we go from summer into fall. If we get like a 60-degree day, we're like, whoo, it's chilly. Or a 50-degree day, it's chilly, right? But if we're in the dead of winter and we have a 50 or 60-degree day, it's actually feeling really warm to us. So what happens is when the seasons change, it takes our body a little bit of time to acclimate to the new conditions, the climate conditions. But adaptation is a little different from the word acclimation. So adaptation can take hundreds to thousands of years for an organism to change a trait. So it doesn't happen for a species throughout its lifespan. So if we have one organism, it's not going to adapt in its lifetime. That species might adapt over several lifespans with whatever it needs to survive better. Now, some examples of common adaptations that have taken place over time, things that you might be more familiar with, are camouflage. Several animals can have great camouflage to the surroundings, like the polar bear is white, and many animals in the polar regions are white or gray or clear, and so that can help blend in with the environment. Also, we have some animals now that have warning colors. It can be in their neck, where they extend their neck. It could be in their feathers, if they extend their feathers a certain way. It could just be the coloring of their entire body or part of their body. So a couple of those you might be familiar with. Protective covering is another one. Sometimes things have like a harder shell to protect them from things. So at the bottom of the screen, you might see that there is an extra credit opportunity coming up. If you would like this opportunity, you could check with me on Wednesday or Thursday of this week to get more information. But the deadline for this extra credit opportunity will be next week, so you want to check soon. All right, that's it for your notes, and hope you have a great rest of the day.